Greetings and salutations, audience. Mixed Game Mike here, bringing you Ace in the Window. Today, live to tape from the Bicycle Hotel and Casino in Bell Gardens, California. Greetings and salutations, audience. Mixed Game Mike here with Ace in the Window. Today, I'm joined by a co-host from the World Series of Poker, friend from dealing as well, Connie Dean.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How's
Great
it
to
going?
see ya.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on the program today.
Definitely.
And helping out in the co-host chair today.
Yeah,
so,
I'm happy to be
it's
here.
great to see you.
Yeah.
Well, let's quickly tell the audience a little bit more about you. Obviously, I already mentioned that you were a dealer at the World Series, as I was, and that is how we met. But what else do you do?
Well, I'm a longtime poker enthusiast. I started playing poker as a kid with my dad. You know, we were in a family of 9, so I've been playing poker almost my whole life. I started getting serious about poker about 25 years ago. And I played as a hobby mostly. But then about 15 years ago, I started a poker coaching business. And then 9 years ago, I started playing poker for a living. So I thought the World Series would be really fun to deal because it was the 50th anniversary and I could meet so many people that I've, known for a long time but haven't reconnected with, or, some of my poker idols for the first time, and I got to do that.
Yeah.
So that was super exciting. I'm not the best dealer, but it was a good experience overall.
Well, we're in the same boat on that one. That's a lot of the reasons why I decided to deal the World Series this year, the 50th anniversary, all the things you were talking about, getting to meet these folks, just having them sit at my table.
Yeah.
It was great. On a previous episode, I talked about some of the folks I had the chance to deal to. Since then, I've actually been able to have a few others come around my table, including I finally had the great time of having Phil Hellmuth sit directly to my right in seat 9 in a 9-handed event. So that was really fun. Came down and sat at my table.
To my right as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was the dealer who busted him in the Raz tournament.
Oh.
And got to see him, go off on the other player in typical Phil Hellmuth style. So, yeah, it was interesting to witness that firsthand. But on a side note, he was very nice to me as a dealer.
Right.
He didn't take his loss out on me.
That's for sure. For sure. Absolutely. I also recently got to push into a table with Phil Huey, which was great. He's locally known in San Antonio because his brother Chris also works at Rounders with us. And he's from San Antonio, so he's well known there. And this year he won the 50K Poker Players Championship.
That's very cool.
He's well known in that regard as well. So
I got to deal to Daniel Negreanu, which was my, poker idol forever. And,
Sure.
And
I got a chance to deal stud to him early, which is really cool. Yeah.
I got to take a picture with him, so that's going to be in my favorites for a long time.
Right? Definitely.
Yep. Posted on Facebook within minutes.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, good experience overall.
Cool. Well, that's great. Yeah. I had a lot of fun also. So, speaking of the World Series, though, it is wrapped up. It's all done. The grand winner was...
Yeah.
Not that I can necessarily pronounce his
Eason,
name. I apologize.
Is it Eason?
Hussein Eason, something like that.
Yeah, he played
Not
phenomenally
good on the pronunciation, but the guy nailed it at the final table. I mean, he almost went wire to wire as the chip leader. There was a dip there kind of towards the end when it got 3-handed where he lost the chip lead briefly, but he fought back and he won.
Yeah, he played well.
Yeah.
Not as aggressive as you might have expected. He really picked his spots, and I felt like he was going to be the winner, not just because of his chip lead, but because he didn't overplay his hands. He didn't wasn't ultra aggressive. So I felt like he's a well-deserved winner.
Yep. Did quite well, and the whole final table was a pretty good group of folks. So
it really was.
Pretty good play.
Yeah, I felt like it, for a lot of people who are watching poker for the first time, that it, it gave them a good sense of that poker is a gentleman's game, and it's, I appreciate how they dressed,
business, right?
and
there was a whole lot of stuff going on. Yeah, I love the tuxedo.
I know that was so classy.
On day, I don't know what day that was. It's too many days to keep track of, but one of the last days.
Yeah. It was his last session,
right,
but even before that, he wore a suit, so
sure,
he looked really nice. And I think people get the image of poker being in a smoky room with people cussing and drinking, and it's really not like that at all. So it was nice to show poker in a different light.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Poker in a different light. Speaking of which, in a different light entirely, we have live poker in a cash game session every week, Tuesday night. Rounders Live has been going on. This last Tuesday, we had another 5-5 game. It was a lot of fun to watch. We had some great commentary from Al and JT. And that show is going to continue. It's going to be on again on Tuesday night. We're also looking to possibly come into some daytime broadcasts. We don't have the specific dates yet, but if you click the subscribe button and the notifications bell, you will hear when we go live. And so you'll know that we're going live during the day. The main purpose of going live during the day will be able to showcase our 3-6 Omaha game, which is primarily a daytime game. And we'll also be able to pull in just some of the other daytime action going on and give other players who maybe have other things they have to do at night a chance to be on the show as well.
That's awesome.
So that is coming soon.
I'm going to have to come visit your card room.
Yes, absolutely. It's a fun place to visit. So,
is it? Okay.
Come on out.
I'll check it out.
Yeah. After Cherokee, I guess, right? You got a whole bunch of other things coming up. So
I do. Yeah.
So since you were available for the show, I figured it would only make sense if I brought in a lot of your experience and looked into kind of the coaching and playing background to look to see if we could pull any bits out for the audience to have a takeaway for, how you're thinking about certain poker situations and, how you might coach someone to go through a situation or think through a situation. So I'm going to use an old show of Poker Sesh as a guide on this one for a lot of the questions. And that was the show where Abe Limon interviewed Mike Basich, which, if you're interested, you can find highlights on the Poker Sesh Design YouTube channel. That is our sister channel, I suppose. Links are available in the description, and you can see all the highlights from the Mike Basich interview. It's a lot of good general information and a lot of just discussion about poker. And so we're going to go over kind of some of the same questions that Abe asked Mike, and just kind of, see how the answers are.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Let's talk strategy.
Let's see if I can read them now. These damn reading glasses. Okay. So the first scenario really was, let's talk about if you can name a couple of things winning players do. Now these are winning players, so players that they're not losers. They win in the game, but maybe they win less than what they could be making. Maybe in a 2-5 or 5-5 game, someone who is banging out $30 an hour where they probably could be $100 an hour. What mistakes are they making that you're able to, you're able to observe that they're just not quite getting it done as well as they could be?
There are so many players like this, first of all,
Yeah.
that could be doing so much better with a few coaching sessions, and instead they're grinding out, making $30 an hour. My average for many years has been over $100 an hour, and for me, I attribute that to a few things. One is that I try not to put a lot of chips at risk. So a lot of times these guys will sit down with the maximum buy-in. For me, I don't think that's a great strategy. You're putting all of your chips at risk right away instead of winning the chips that you're risking. So it makes sense to me to do a smaller buy-in, win those chips, and then the chips that you've won are at risk instead of the money out of your pocket. So for me, that's something that I see over and over again.
I can back that up just briefly with the story of something that happened to me recently when I was playing. I played the Brad O and Andrew Nemi meetup game at South Point 2 days ago.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know. Days kind of blur together. Maybe it was 3 days ago. I'm not sure. But anyway, I bought in for 200, and I had, through several hands, gotten that up to about 800 or so, which is a nice increase. It's good to build that up.
Right.
And then I found pocket kings. I thought, oh, this is good. I might be able to win another hand. This is kind of cool. So there's raising involved, and we do end up getting it all in pre-flop. And naturally, of course, I'm up against aces. And there went my $800.
Right.
But it wasn't $800. It was only $2.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. So it was much better for me to run in my opinion, to run into aces in that situation and only losing $200, feeling like I lost $8, but only actually losing $200 rather than having bought in for my entire whatever amount that I had, 1,000 or something, and then lose that instead. So
well, people often ask me about, I play 2-5. That's my go-to game, and everyone's sitting around with $1,000 to $2,000 in front of them, and many times I will buy in for 200, and they're just like, how can you do that? Usually within an hour, I have an average chip stack. So I'm only risking 200. Again, within an hour or so, I have enough chips where people aren't going to try to push me around. Obviously, I pick my spots with the 200. I can take more chances with it.
Right.
If I lose it, I rebuy. Yeah. I'll do 3 rebuys at $200. So I'm risking 600 in a 2-5 game. And it's, for me, makes more sense to take 3 cracks at it at $200 than to buy in one time for 600 or even more. So I think that's one of the strategies that's really worked well for me. And my losses, aren't so great. So if you're keeping track over weeks or months and you're averaging out your per hour, $30 an hour versus $100 an hour. Some of that starts right at the beginning when you buy in.
Right.
Another thing I would say is setting nightly and weekly goals for yourself. And once you hit that nightly goal, you are out. You leave. Once you hit that weekly goal, you quit playing for the week. Most people play too much. They play too many hours in a session, and they play too many days in the week. For me, I usually play 3 days a week. I average about 15 hours a week playing poker. That's not a lot. Right. You need to have a life outside of the game.
Yeah.
If you love the game so much, that it's all you want to do, you're not going to be a winning player.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Any other just general advice for that type of player?
Yeah, I would encourage them to get some poker lessons. There's a lot of people out there who can just observe their game, but ultimately setting goals, not buying in for so much, leaving while you're ahead.
Yeah.
They're all pretty basic key strategies that people don't follow.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. So there was a situation from the show where a caller called in and described the situation. I'm just going to summarize it real quick. She described a situation in which she's playing with a group of retirees on a regular basis. I believe it may have been at a retirement home or something like that. That she would go and visit them, and they wanted to play poker. She played poker with them. They were the stereotypical old man coffee type of player. Sipping coffee, playing aces, and folding everything else.
Right.
So what she wanted to know was, what was the advice for playing against a table like that? Because she would find herself with something like ace queen suited and following a nut flush draw and trying to determine, she knew that if she hit the flush, she was going to get paid off because they were never folding if they had aces or kings.
So she has a lot of implied odds.
Exactly, but she also knows if they raise, that's what they have. What kind of hands is she wanting to continue with? So that's kind of where the discussion went, was how do you navigate that type of table and those types of players?
Right. Sorry, I'm nursing a little cough here. But those types of players are super easy to read and very easy to play against. You are going to obviously play all of your suited connectors. A lot of times you will hit two pair when they have an overpair, so that's a pretty bankable win for you. I would broaden your range of hands significantly, and you're going to catch sets, and pretty much when they check to you, you should bet like 75% of the time. They're going to do folding. If they check raise, then you know where you're at and you can dump the hand pretty inexpensively. It's almost like they're playing their cards face up. And if you have the proper odds, let's be honest, a lot of these guys can lay down a pair of aces if a flush comes on the river. You don't have as many implied odds as you think. Unless they have a history of paying off any hand because they have aces. But most of these guys, they see that the flush hit and they'll shake their head and they'll fold the hand. So I would avoid going in against them when you put them on aces and kings and things like that. You're going to have 200 other hands that you can beat them in. So I would stick to those hands. That would be my strategy.
Yeah.
I would see a whole lot of hands.
Seems to make sense to me.
10-3 in the small blind, that you would normally fold. You might call those and see a flop, and you hit your two pair against their aces. It's a gold mine for you.
Yeah, that's true. They won't see that coming.
They're not going to see that. They're going to think no one on the planet is going to call 10-3 offsuit.
Yeah. So the next caller to the show wanted to go back to a poker house quiz, and they ended up going through two scenarios. So we're going to go through the same two scenarios and just kind of see, what your kind of response is for those. The scenario is, it's a 2-5 game. Everyone is about 100 big blinds deep. The under the gun player raises to 35. Middle position calls, and you're in the small blind with ace queen off. What are you going to do?
So for me, I like to see a lot of hands. I'm going to call in that position. But the truth is that these types of questions are difficult because everything in poker is relative.
Yes.
So, what do you know about these players? Have you been observing them for hours, or are you just sitting down fresh at the table? If you're sitting down fresh at the table, I always take a dip in my chip stack right at the beginning because I'm paying off hands to learn how people play. And then I, make a comeback after I know how they play. But for the most part, you need to categorize this player. How do they play? Have you seen them raise with ace, queen? What are their raising hand ranges? You don't want to get too deep into a hand where they could have aces, kings, queens, or ace king against you. That's a nightmare scenario. But I think in this situation, most of the time, you're going to see a flop with this hand. I don't recommend re-raising ever in this scenario unless you're playing with two wild and crazy players. And then, if you hit your ace or your queen on the flop, I would check. It makes you look weak, and your opponent might continuation bet, but they might not. And if they don't, then that gives you information. If they do, that gives you information. So I don't bet in that situation to see where I'm at, to see if I get raised. I check and call. I'm usually there. So there's a lot of factors that go into that, but pretty much never folding ace queen pre-flop unless I put somebody on a big hand.
Okay. Similar situation, but in this case, the undergun player only opened for 20. 3 people in the middle called, and you're still in the small blind with king 10 off.
Again, I'm just calling there. I like to see a lot of hands though. So for me, you flop a straight or you flop 2 pair, you're in really good shape. If a king flops out there or a 10, I'm less likely to bet in those situations. But 4-way action with that hand, and it's only costing you 15 to win basically 80. It's not a bad scenario. I would see a flop with that hand.
Do you ever consider that as a candidate for a squeeze play?
I'm not.
With only one person behind.
I'm not a big fan of a squeeze play with cards that bad.
Okay.
And I think you're in the worst position. So you have to tread carefully here. I mean, everyone's going to see what you do, and they're going to start putting you on a hand. You want to play in such a way that they don't know what you have. So you want to do the opposite of what they would expect you to do. So, but there's not really a flop. I mean, you can almost check in the dark because there's not many flops here that you're going to bet out on. Maybe an open-end flop you might bet. Again, because you don't have anything and you're trying to demonstrate strength when you're pretty weak. But I'm mostly letting the continuation better see what they're going to do in that situation. Again, it comes down to what type of player they are. Do they raise 50% of the hands that they enter the pot with, or 10% of the hands? Okay. Those kind of things make a difference.
All right.
So you really, the entire time you're playing, put your phone down, turn it off, watch the players, see their betting patterns. That's going to make you more money than whatever you're doing on your phone, most likely. So pay attention.
Yeah.
I don't see poker players paying attention these days. They play their own hands and they don't care, really. And it's one of those things that's making them $30 an hour instead of over $100 an hour. So
just not paying attention.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Well, the next question that was asked was, what do you like to do with marginal hands under the gun, like ace jack off, pair of deuces, and along with that, what's your cutoff under the gun for just folding?
So you could probably guess the answer to this question. I see a lot of hands. I do. I call all of it, Am I going to play 2-3 of spades under the gun? Yes, I am. Am I going to play a pair of sixes under the gun? Yes. Am I going to play high cards under the gun? Yes. I'm going to play all of those hands unless somebody on my left is raising 75% of the time. I'll fold marginal hands like 8-10 suited, but I'm making money on most of these hands. So if they raise to 20 to 35, somewhere in that range, I'm going to call most of those hands pre-flop. And it's very easy to get away from it if the flop comes and you have none of it. Mm-hmm. But you're going to flop a lot of good draws and a lot of two-pair hands, mm-hmm. and you're going to take those players down a lot of times. So if you have deuces, you're obviously looking for a set on the mm-hmm. flop. If you don't hit a set, it's very easy to fold.
Right.
If you hit a set, then you're going to get paid off. Mm-hmm. If they're re-raising to something like 75 or 80 pre-flop, which, there's a bet, a raise, and a re-raise, mm-hmm. I'll dump those hands.
Yeah.
But if it's less than 40, I'm usually calling. So I would say that's my.
All right.
It's more of a monetary cutoff than a card cutoff.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I can follow what you're saying there. Last scenario that was kind of outlined we're going to discuss is you have an active player that you kind of classify as a solid player, but it's been very active recently. They raise in late position. You are on the button. And what kind of hand ranges are you thinking about a 3-bet against their active open range?
Aces, kings, queens, ace, king. That's about it.
That's about it?
Yeah. I don't do a lot of 3-betting mm-hmm. against a solid active player unless I see him raising with all kinds of trashy hands. So if I'm not sure, I err on the side of caution. And how many players do I want in this hand? If it's pocket eights, bring on the players. If I hit my set, I want the players to be in there. Mm-hmm. If it's pocket aces and that hand doesn't work well 4-way, you want to re-raise a hand like that and get it heads up, and hopefully they have something like pocket queens or mm-hmm. And you're a massive favorite in a situation like that. But I don't I like to be the raiser, not the re-raiser most of the time, so I limit my re-raising hands.
Okay.
I'm not a big fan of the squeeze play.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ugh. Hey, you. It's the backup camera, but still. Okay. Where are we? Oh, yes. What strategies make you a consistent winning player?
So I've been tracking my winnings for a long time. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. I think the things that make me a winning player are that I have a life outside of poker. I set goals for myself and I adhere to those goals. There are 3 basic levels of poker. There's, your level 1 is like ABC poker. Those players can win, but they're never going to win a lot of money. They're going to win consistently, but they're not going to win a lot of money. Level 2 is where you're incorporating some other strategies, more bluffing, more check raising. And level 3 is where you're like this unpredictable player who is as likely to turn over pocket aces as, any other random hand.
Right.
So for me, I want to be that third player. I want to be that level 3 player that's just unpredictable,
right,
somewhat aggressive, but not too much, where you're alienating players. I have a super friendly table image. I leave while I'm ahead.
Right.
I manage my bankroll. I am the queen of check raising. I like to play with an aggressive table because a lot of the money that I make is from check raising hands. I believe in the philosophy of when you're weak, act strong, and when you're strong, act weak. So I also think that you need to incorporate some bluffing into your, what is your table image? If you have a good table image, you should incorporate bluffing into your game strategy. Again, I can't emphasize enough just setting goals, adhering to those goals. Many poker pros will tell you never to leave a game that you think you can win at. But poker players in general are very egotistical and they think that they can win at any game. That's honestly how I feel. That's that I can win at any game.
That's how we sit down and play. Yeah. If we didn't think we could win, why would you sit down?
Right. So, so it's important to leave before you. The truth is, you could have the mortal nuts on a hand and still lose when the turn comes or when the river comes. Or you could have a kings versus aces scenario. Your chips are never on lockdown. No matter how tight you think you're playing, you're going to run into a hand that puts your chips at risk.
Right.
And so you need to leave before that happens.
Yep.
So set a goal. If you have been playing for 5 hours and you have $500 profit in front of you, get the hell out of there.
Right.
Like, what are you doing? So sometimes you're going to sit down and in 45 minutes you're going to have over $1,000 in front of you. That obviously skyrockets your hourly ratio. Right. So don't think I have barely gotten here. I've barely played any hands. Just leave.
Yeah.
Go do something fun. Make sure that you have something outside of your poker life that's just as exciting as playing poker.
Absolutely. Very
so
good.
That's good advice.
Okay. Well, that was really great advice. Hope people will pay attention to that and listen to that. So, today we are shooting the show from the fabulous Bicycle Casino and Hotel in Los Angeles, California. Or I should say, lovely Bell Gardens, California.
That's right, Bell Gardens.
Yes, from Bell Gardens, California.
Check it out.
Absolutely. So you guys, if you're out in Los Angeles, you're looking at the poker scene, you probably have heard of or are familiar with the Commerce. Thank you, Matt Savage and LAPC. It's very well known in the poker community. The Bike, a slightly less known, but a mere 2 years ago, they completed a massive renovation of their property, including the entire casino floor, the Live at the Bike studio, which is right outside, right off the casino floor, bar downstairs with a giant jumbotron for sports, and it's really a great atmosphere. The hotel is in great condition, very well renovated. Everything looks new and modern. So it's a great place to stay, a great place to play, and I certainly would recommend it. So
Highly recommend.
hope you guys
Two
come
thumbs
out.
up.
Yeah. And thank you very much for coming in today. We certainly appreciate you
It
taking
was
over the
so
co-host
fun.
chair. So
Yeah,
we've been
it's a
talking
good
about it a
time.
little bit. I'm glad we were able to finally get this to work out. So thank you very much
Thanks,
for coming
Michael.
in. Appreciate it.
Yeah, take care.
All right.